How is your online security? Hey, I'm John Harris, and this is another episode of Exponential Radio. And today we're talking all things cybersecurity and trying to look at ways to reduce costs, but we know it is an expense. And a lot of small and medium enterprises actually can't afford the right kind of sophistication, the right kind of security. It's just too expensive. But, hopefully costs do decline as there gets more market share and scale of economies, and it becomes more and more possible. It's going to be necessary because there are a lot of issues, a lot of specific points that we need to discuss looking at cybercrime going forward. First thing is there's the cost to industry by 2025 will be something like 10 trillion US dollars. That's what the crime is going to cost businesses, and it's also affects financial institutions and many other institutions we know, as well as government institutions, and privacy. It's a big problem for privacy for individuals. These are things that are happening more and more and more. They're collecting, as these companies collect and analyze data, for the social platforms, etc., to help with marketing and various aspects online. So too, the Internet of Things, where you got all these extra devices coming in. People can access you, as you know, through your printer and everything else. So as there are more of these things coming online, it's getting easier and easier to access your information. And that increases crime again. The other thing we need to look at is it's changing from just being annoying to really being dangerous, because there's a lot of this ransomware. And it's changed. It's becoming very precarious for big businesses. We know of some really big attacks. The next point I want to make is cybersecurity and regulations, because as the crime increases, as the Internet of Things increases, we're going to have more regulatory environment. And some of the things we need to look at is data protection. And this is not easy, because when you deal with global entities, you're dealing with EU, which is a far more diverse language, culture than perhaps something like the US. So it's very difficult per country and per region to get a unified directive. Now, we've got other things like e-transaction laws, privacy laws, cybercrime laws, consumer protection laws, and this is the NIS, the GDPR, and NISA are all organizations that are trying to address this. But as you can see, and as I've mentioned, it's very difficult when you start taking on the globe as such, and you start dealing with all these different nations and their own particular sets of laws and things. It's not an easy task, and this is something that the crime syndicates are taking advantage of. It's kind of they're robbing, where they used to rob banks, they're now robbing people online. That's where the money's at. The next point I want to bring up is cybersecurity, the skills gap. So there is a big opportunity here, as I mentioned, within the law, addressing all these new laws and legal entities taking part in that, but also within the actual cybersecurity arena. There's a 3 million job shortage of skilled people, which is an opportunity for youngsters, though it does come with a double edge, because a lot of people that are involved in these jobs are finding it very stressful. There are not enough people handling the work, and it's obviously very big pressure. So again, this is to do with costs. So we've got to look at further technology, which we'll chat about just now. Obviously AI coming in and what it can do. But when you talk about data security, the security risk management, these are areas that people could look to for work in the future. As I've mentioned, for the next perhaps 8 years or so, before AI totally starts to take everybody out. Security risk management, security compliance, threat detection, and obviously the reaction to that, and network security. So those are areas that you can look at as far as work's concerned, because there's a big shortage here. So if you're going to get skilled, that's one area that you could perhaps get trained up in. Cyber infrastructure and resilience is very important, having robust infrastructure and networks. These obviously that can be affect, as we mentioned, we've seen with these big attacks, where it can affect the whole financial stability of a country or region. It can affect public health sector, can affect telecom sector, energy, transportation, and also emergency agencies. So it's very, very dangerous. And this is what some of the big syndicates are targeting to get big payoffs. So we're going to have to keep, it's dynamic, it's evolving. So as the crime increases, so does the security, and it's kind of an arms race. Next is cyber risk and governance. So when we talked about the regulatory environment, we're looking at governance, and you're going to see a lot of boards or companies where they actually have a committee or somebody on the board who's in charge purely of cyber security and how they're going to handle it. And strategic objectives for the company as far as cyber is concerned, the frameworks about which they want to set up, and also the risk and authorization. So in many companies you'll have levels of authorization of what people can and cannot do and who has access to what. So that's also going to be very important, because a lot of these things can be circumvented through, obviously, corruption. Cybersecurity, the new technologies. So we got, as that technology progresses, so the risk increases. So a lot of cloud-based operations now getting security built into them. The Internet of Things, as I mentioned, which can have to start to look at data being refined, user logons, telemetry, geospatial information, and we're going to have to use things like AI to sort all this information out. And there is AI Zero Trust, which will help locate what PC and what location, things that it will start to do. Hopefully the AI can start to have a bigger impact in a good way as far as sorting all this data out and responding immediately. Next, I'd like to talk about the diplomacy and international, as I've touched on. Not easy. Global activities vary greatly. You've got to have visibility and transparency to get that security. So guarding tech is a big opportunity, but very difficult as it comes to global and diplomacy. You can understand that a lot of countries are trying to use it as an advantage, a leverage, a business leverage, an economic leverage. And so it's not easy to get people on the same page. So these nation states basically is the level of the crime that we're talking about. And we've got to try and develop a framework of common goals, obviously, so everybody has some sort of security. Lastly, the supply chain risks, and we've seen this with SolarWinds, a huge attack, and affected the supply chain. And a lot of this comes from third-party software, hardware. We've spoken about these different types of hardware coming into play now. The information tech itself. So, this has affected, I mentioned, NATO, the US, EU, everywhere. And it's low-cost products that are bringing in a lot of these, of Internet of Things, that are bringing in some of these spyware, GPSs, temperature control instruments, etc., etc. And that's basically everything's connected, okay? So, as I mentioned, AI Zero Trust is one of the things. And the other is going to be very powerful SLAs, service level agreements, to have those in place to have immediate effect and consequence to some of these things. Anyway, that was a little bit of a discussion on cyber. If you want some of the back episodes, you can go to johnarthurharris.blogspot.com. And as usual, we will see you in the next episode.